There we go. Okay, fantastic. Good afternoon, everybody, families. It's a pleasure to be welcoming you online today for our KS2 Century Webinar. I will introduce you very quickly to our two hosts today. We've got Ewan from Sentry and Charles as well, who've been working very closely with the Academy for the past few years in terms of supporting our implementation of Sentry and guide us through kind of making the most of it and really enhancing the students' learning along the way. So first of all, thank you very much for Ewan and Charles for taking the time to be with us here today. The purpose of today's session, is Key Stage 2 home learning. In fact, primary across primary, our home learning has been launched today, and that linked to our home learning menus. And one of the key players in Key Stage 2 home learning is Sentry. And today, what the purpose is for families to discover just what Sentry is, what the purpose of it is, how it links to what we do in the Academy, and how you can use it at home. Because although it will be used for home learning, Sentry is much more than just a tool for students to complete activities on and complete their home learning on a weekly basis. What we describe Sentry as is a blended learning tool. So it's not just used at home, it's used in school as well. And I know Charles will probably touch upon briefly about how that's how it can be used both in class and out of school as well. But the main focus is obviously how you can use this at home. The main thing about Sentry is it allows learning to be taken from the classroom and continued at home. So it's not just like a one-off activity that doesn't really link to what's going on in class. It's very much directly linked to what's been taught, but also what has previously been taught. One of the key things that attracted the Academy to Sentry is the link to the science of learning and how the brain learns, and Sentry is built around that neuroscience and how the brain learns and how students learn best. I know Charles will talk about that shortly. And so it very much fits in with our whole school vision of implementing the science of learning and the most current up-to-date neuroscience research on how children learn best. It links very much directly to that. So it's very exciting to have Sentry and to be able to use that. It's also a target setting tool, so it allows us to see what the gaps are for students, what we can do to support those students, and it will even support the tackling of those targets and cater for individual students' needs. It also links to our assessments, so teachers will use Sentry to feed into the assessments, it's feed into the students' reports, etc. And the great thing about Sentry is it covers all core subjects, that's maths, English and science. And so I always say to the families, if there's one tool to go to in order to support your child in Key Stage 2, it is Sentry, because it has science, English and maths on there, which is fantastic. It's all in one place. So hopefully that's getting you a bit excited, but I'm going to hand you over now to Charles and Ewan, who are the real experts, who'll be able to share with you just how to use Sentry and what you can do at home with it. Thank you very much, Charles. Thank you, Ewan.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Ben. Well, maybe we are the experts, but after setting out your vision at the school there for Sentry, I'd have to say you'd have to join us on that expert panel. Thanks very much. Yeah, so my name is Ewan. I'm your dedicated account manager here with Sentry, and so it's my job to make sure that the whole Academy is really making the most of our AI-powered platform. Over the past year, I just have a snapshot of what the Academy has been up to over the past year. So more than 80,000 nuggets completed. Some of you will be very familiar with nuggets. For those that are wondering, what is a nugget? All shall become clear shortly. So that included over 800,000 questions. Great feedback from students on the platform as well. You'll be happy to know that the most frequently reported emotions were either happy or proud. And last year, the most popular topic on the platform was maths, although of course we do offer English and science as well. So I'll be around for this upcoming year also to make sure that students and teachers are both making best use of the tool that we have to offer, and to help facilitate any new usage models that are being put into place, including setting for homework. But anyway, that's enough from me for now. I'd like to now hand over to Charles, who's our international partnerships lead. And Charles is going to as well as taking you through how the platform works, how students can log in and complete work on the platform. Also sort of shed a bit of light onto our ethos here at Sentry, and a bit of sort of what the foundations of our platform is built on, so the neuroscience and other things behind it as well. So yeah, over to you, Charles.
Thanks, Ewan, and thanks for the warm introduction, Ben. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you all today, and thank you for giving up some of your Tuesday afternoon to hear us dial in from a very rainy London. As Ewan mentioned, I'm going to talk you through a bit of a history about the company, why we built what we built, and then show you the platform and give you some practical tips around how you can use it and best support your children's learning at home. Before that, just a bit of virtual housekeeping. You might have noticed there is a Q&A box and there is a chat box. Feel free to use those functions to comment, to ask your questions. If there are things you'd like to know about the product or the company, that's a great place to put those questions. Ewan will be monitoring that throughout the session, and will answer some directly. He will also direct some to me to answer during the session. So if you have questions, this is a great time to ask. So what are we all about? Well, I guess maybe a little bit about me. I've spent the past decade in education, but from a business perspective, I'm the founder, and I ran a company called Impact Education, which was a string of learning centers across Hong Kong and Macau. I did that for 5 years. And then I went to work for the Bush Foundation, which set up the American Youth Literacy Foundation across North America, and that was actually helping students and adults with their literacy rates through a mobile application that we developed. So I've always been really interested in technology, and particularly the power of technology to scale up really good solutions. And so that was what really led me to the work that Sentry were doing. When I joined Sentry 4 years ago, they were already a 4-year-old company, but they were in what's known as stealth mode, which is a tech term. That's where your company is formalized, it has a team in place, but you're really just doing your research and ensuring that you have product market fit. And for us, as a company that uses AI, it was a chance for us to collect and use a lot of the training data to build up our initial product. My role when I joined the company was to take Sentry to all 4 corners of the globe, and we're really proud to have taken us to 47 countries today, with a huge presence across Dubai and Abu Dhabi, where we work with around 50 or 60 schools in the region, which is brilliant. But what's driving us? Why did we set this company up in the first place? Well, it's actually, the vision is from a lady called Priya Lakhani, who's our founder and CEO, quite a sort of well-known social impact entrepreneur here in the UK. And Priya's vision was to try to bring a scalable solution to the classroom, which would help teachers personalize and differentiate education for every individual child. We know that differentiation and personalization accelerates learning. The problem with it is that often it requires a one-to-one human interaction, which of course in the classroom is not always possible where you have 20 or 30 children. And so we built a solution that uses AI in order to identify each and every child's skills, strengths, areas for improvement, pace of learning, preferences, even their memory function. How long does it take to move something from your short-term working memory into your long-term memory, which is really important if you think about the way the examination system is set up and the idea of recalling information over time. And so what that looks like is we're delivering a personalized pathway to each child with high quality learning content on that's all being produced in-house. We're using the platform to empower teachers so that teachers have more time face-to-face with students and are using that data and that information to provide a more granular and personalized education to children. We're using a lot of data, of course, and that's really useful to map and monitor progress and show that this product is having an impact on learning outcomes, which is, of course, our entire goal. And whilst this may not be relevant to a region like Dubai, and particularly in sort of fee-paying international schools, as a social impact company, we are always looking to try and close the disadvantage gap and make sure that this technology can be funded and put into state schools as well as the private sector. So we work with a lot of government organizations, ministries of education, to localize this product into different countries around the world. that's a little bit about us, but I thought maybe I've said AI a few times and artificial intelligence, and I know there are lots of misconceptions around what AI is. So this is quite a good opportunity to spell that. What is AI? Well, AI is essentially trying to replicate certain cognitive functions of the brain, and particularly looking at the way in which we learn. And if you think about us for a moment as humans, we learn from our experience, the things around us, the way we interact with things, our teachers, our mentors, and we learn from the moment that we're born. That's part of the human cycle. Machines or computers learn in slightly, well, they don't learn, they follow instructions. Traditionally, developers will have coded things into scripts, into lines of code, and that is known as sort of input-output. The machine or the computer will only react based on what a human has designed or input into that machine. And so what artificial intelligence is looking to do is try to have computers or machines learn from experience, and particularly in this setting, learn from other students around the world, or learn from how students can progress in a more optimal route and tailor that journey for each and every child in a live manner. However, machines don't learn from experience. Machines, of course, learn from data. And so they capture data, they look at it, they clean it, and then they use that information in order to make a recommendation or to tweak the learning journey of a student. And so that's what we mean when we're referring to artificial intelligence. And it's interesting, when I used to visit classrooms a lot, I'd always ask children to raise their hand if they use or interact with AI on a daily basis. And maybe that's a question you can ask your children tonight. And you get a few sort of tentative hands going up, but actually all of you, I would argue, interact or use AI on a daily basis because it is all around us, whether it's in your Google search engine or your Siri or Alexa natural language processing machine that you have in your phone or in the separate device. If you're a Netflix subscriber or a Spotify user, you will have a section which says recommended songs or shows for you. That is using a layer of artificial intelligence to try to map recommendations against other users who've watched similar shows to you. AI has even moved into the worlds of security, the medical world. I'm sure lots of you will be familiar with, and have now made some sort of groundbreaking moves into the use of AI, and that's through companies like DeepMind. And it's even touched upon the food and beverage industry, trying to tweak ingredients based on user feedback. So it is everywhere, it's here to stay, and it's important we understand what it is, how it can benefit us, and how it can serve us for the needs that we have, in this case, personalizing education for children. And we recognize that AI wasn't the sole component, and actually a more important component was our understanding of neuroscience. So brain science, if you like, the way in which we learn. And there has been fascinating research in this area. We're very lucky we have an in-house neuroscientist who informs the way that we design our products and looks at research and theories around the way in which we learn. And so we sort of combined the two and have positioned our products somewhere in between to take advantage of those two branches. And that's what we built. We built Sentry, and there's lots of sort of more detailed information on our website, and I'm happy to answer questions around how some of those areas apply. And indeed, in a minute, we'll see in the product the areas that are focused on the neuroscience elements. This is just a snapshot of where we are in the world. We're, as I said, in 47 countries, and now we have some localized versions of the product, including in Arabic, in Urdu in Pakistan, and in Spanish in Mexico. So really have a global presence and work with some fantastic schools. I think it's fair to say that we are sort of a trusted partner amongst some of the most premium and well-known school groups around the world, which says a lot to the quality of our content and technology. And indeed, we've been recognized by MIT and their Solve competition as a winner in 2019. And as you can see from some of the schools we work with, as well as organizations like High Performance Learning, which you might be familiar with, are an organization who embed principles of neuroscience and metacognition into teaching practice, as it's known and recognized as an element that accelerates learning. So yeah, that's who we are and what we're about. We're 90 odd people based mainly in London, and all eager to be able to travel again, hopefully coming to the Middle East in November for the guest show. But without further ado, let me flick my screen to the Sentry Login page. And hopefully in a moment, you should be able to see an account which says Sentry, and it has some username and password credentials already put in. Those of you who've used Sentry will be super familiar with this. We are a web-based application, so that means all you have to do is open up your Google Chrome or your Safari, whatever device you're using, open up your browser, and in this URL bar here, you type app.sentry.tech, and that should get you to the login page on any device. It's actually optimized for mobile as well. So if you want to use it on your mobile phone, you can do so. We always suggest something slightly larger like an iPad or a laptop, just because the larger screen is a more optimal learning experience based on our research. You also have your single sign-on features. So if you have your Google or Microsoft account, you can go in straight through that. And what I'm going to show you today is the student side of the platform and give you some tips around how that can be used in a home setting to help with that continuum of learning from what occurs in school to what occurs at home. So let's sign in as a student, and I'm just a fictitious student today, a primary student called Sunetra Gupta, if any are familiar with, who's obviously very well known, particularly after the pandemic and her work in epidemiology. But when you log in on a daily basis, your children will receive these "Did you know" push messages. Now, there are thousands of these, and these have been designed by neuroscientists with the idea of prompting positive behavior and an understanding of the way in which we learn. So we'll try to link these messages to activities that the students have completed on the platform. So here it's saying the best way to remember information is to test yourself on it after some time. This is called the testing effect. And this is something we're going to look at in a bit more detail when we go into some of the learning materials. Other messages that you might see are linked to memory. How does long-term memory work? What are neural pathways in the brain? What are synapses? So it tries to teach students about this with the idea of giving them that ownership and independence, and crucially, the understanding about how they learn. I think if there is one thing that you can leave formal education with, it is the ability to understand the optimal way in which you learn and can continue learning throughout adulthood. A really important skill that is going to only become more important with this sort of ever-changing workspace that we're seeing. So those can be engaged with, and I'd really encourage your children to read those. And then here, we're brought to what's known as the recommended path. And this has been sort of alluded to for a few times throughout the presentation, but this recommended path is the entire sort of heart of Sentry, if you like. And this is what's trying to personalize and differentiate the delivery of content and questions to students based on their individual needs. So no pathway will look the same. If you're having your child's friends over for a play date or an evening, sometimes it's quite interesting to compare pathways to see what children are studying and which areas they're focusing on. When I used to visit classrooms, we'd always look at different pathways and they'd always be different. First and foremost, that pathway is based on whichever subjects or courses have been assigned, and that's controlled by the school, and they should have assigned a mathematics and English and a science course as a sort of basis. And those are the core subject areas that we currently offer. All aligned to the English National Curriculum. We've also looked at things like the Singaporean maths techniques, Cambridge checkpoints, White Rose maths. So it encompasses a lot of the sort of core learning that students will need in order to progress through into secondary education. After courses have been assigned, the pathway then begins to filter these sort of little circular things that you're seeing on my screen down into this pathway here. These are what we call nuggets, which I realize is a slightly esoteric term for learning, but nuggets are basically bite-sized chunks of learning, or nano lessons, if you like. And these nuggets come in a few different forms. If you ever want to know why a nugget is being recommended, there's a little question mark next to the path, the word path. You can click on this and it opens up a key which explains why nuggets are being recommended. If you're at the beginning of an academic year, or if you're a brand new user to Sentry, the first thing that you will see are diagnostic assessments. This is maybe a term you're familiar with. I always think it's a good activity to ask children what they think the word diagnostic means. Often they will relate it to a GP or a hospital appointment or a doctor diagnosing you. diagnostic assessment is diagnosing what you know and what you don't know in certain topic areas. I have an example here on my pathway here within word classes in English. If I click on this diagnostic, and if I go back to the instructions, I've already started this diagnostic, you'll meet the little Sentry robot, which explains that this is a diagnostic quiz to help Sentry understand what you should learn next. So this is like a benchmark or a baseline, and they will appear throughout the academic year, either pushed by teachers or pushed automatically by Sentry. And the diagnostics are made up of a series of questions that I can go through in my own pace. So if I go through this, even if I'm getting things right or wrong, you'll notice that as I'm answering questions, I'm getting no feedback at all. That's not a bug, it's not a glitch, it's a really important part of the diagnostic. We don't want students to be disheartened or deterred from learning in the diagnostics. This is just to help Sentry and the teachers understand what students know and what students don't know. It's even okay to click I don't know if students really don't know. It's much better to say I don't know rather than simply guessing. But it's always good to have a try if you kind of understand the area and you want to have a go at it. So that diagnostic won't give me any score, but it will help Sentry begin to make recommendations to me. I'd always advise parents to let children do this at their own pace. There's no sort of time element to this. And also, really importantly, please let your children complete their work on Sentry by themselves. If they get the assistance of a tutor or the assistance of you, that will only benefit Sentry. That will only benefit you, because Sentry will be learning about what you know and you don't know, not what your child knows and what your child doesn't know. So please let children complete this by themselves, and that will benefit them in the longer run, because Sentry will learn about what they need. So we've now completed a diagnostic. We might have completed one in maths, English, and science. And then we begin to get recommendations. The most common recommendation that you will see is what we call focus for improvement, which is a little arrow pointing upwards. This could be to plug a gap in knowledge or to stretch and challenge students in areas where they've shown their confidence. It's all aligned to the curriculum. And so if I go into one of my arrow ones, I don't have one on my pathway just here, but if I go into a similar one, you'll notice that this time we're presented with a piece of learning material. And I'll briefly play this so you can see what it's made up of.
Complete circuits. In this nugget, we will identify if a lamp will light up in a simple circuit.
So this is Cassandra Wise, a former science teacher. We hire 24 odd teachers who have produced all of our content. And Cassandra will go through this particular topic in a variety of ways. So here I'm looking at a chaptered video. I can plug in and listen to the mini lesson. But at the top, you'll notice there's always different types of learning material. So actually, if I want to take my time and go through slowly, then I can go to the slideshow. I can take notes. I'm going through, I can write down the keywords. And this is at my own pace without having to stick to the video. But equally, if I want to go in the video, I can pause it, I can stop it, I can rewind it. So this is what we call self-paced learning. You have the ability to control how you consume that material and whether you revisit it, and if you haven't understood something. That's really important. It's encouraging that agency and independence. At the end of the learning material, students will be faced with a series of questions. Now, in sort of pedagogy terms or educationist terms, these questions are known as formative assessment. Formative assessment is actually a vehicle for learning. Often, there is a huge misconception around formative assessment with students, with parents, with teachers, that it is actually a way for benchmarking students and understanding what they know and what they don't know. Yes, you can do that with formative assessment. Actually, the main vehicle for formative assessment is helping students to learn and progress in this particular skill or knowledge area that we're looking at. So rather than being high stakes, it is very low stakes. Students can answer questions and they get feedback. So I've got this question wrong and it's given me some feedback about why I'm wrong. So look out for that feedback and encourage your children to look for that feedback because they can take it on board, because they're going to get another question. And this time they might be able to answer it correctly. If they, that one, see if I can, that looks closed as well. Okay, there we go. Thankfully, I got that right. But yeah, maybe I used that information that I received on that wrong question to answer the next question correctly. The other really important part of formative assessment is that at any point, if you are stuck and you want to understand, in this case, what an open circuit is, well, you can go here and have a look at that learning material and then use that information to help you answer the questions. This is really, really important, and it's a really important part of learning. We actually call this approach of learning material followed by questions the testing effect. This might be something that you're familiar with. I certainly recommend researching it, having a look at the studies that have been done around the testing effect. Because essentially they looked at two different study groups. One study group which simply read learning materials, maybe made notes, and they did that over and over again. They looked at another study group who read learning materials, but then immediately quizzed themselves on how much of that they've understood. And they did this sort of effect of materials followed by immediate questions. This was proven over time to show that the second group, who did the combination of material and tests, were able to recall and retain information for a longer period of time, rather than the group who simply studied over and over again. And so that's what we're deploying in these nuggets. It's why we quiz and test students immediately after they've had an opportunity to learn, because they can recall, and if they get things wrong, they're able to readjust and actually understand where they went wrong. And because it's all auto-marked, they're getting that feedback instantly. So that's how we're using that testing effect. I'm going to be not a very diligent student here and skip through the questions to get to the end, because I want to show you another feedback mechanism that we have at the end of a nugget. Hopefully none of your children are watching me whiz through this at a breakneck speed, because this is not how Sentry was, or not what it was designed for. But we finished now, and you can see that my completion wasn't full and my score was quite low because I skipped through all those questions. But guess what? I get a bit more feedback about what I did wrong there. So you're not quite there yet. You learn more effectively when you get questions wrong. So notice that I just skipped, and it's encouraging me to actively try and answer questions. It's also saying use that learning material to help you answer the questions. All of the answers to the questions are in the learning materials, and so that's there to support children. They can rate the content and they can say how they feel, which is a form of feedback that is anonymized, but it's looking at activating and deactivating emotions. So it's quite a nice outlet for students. Or they can try again if they're not happy with their score. And that's another thing that you can encourage as parents. If you see on your child's dashboard that they have low percentage scores and low study times, you can encourage them to try that nugget again. They'll get different questions, assessing the same area, but it's a really good form of kind of building up that resilience and kind of positive behavior towards learning. Or they can move on to whatever's being recommended next in their pathway. And so that's how the pathway works, and it will work in a very independent way and bring things forward for students over time. The final thing that students might see is a set by teacher symbol. And teachers can use this in quite advanced ways for flipping learning or blending learning. And so you can see in my pathway, I have a bunch of set by teacher nuggets, and they might appear over time. They might also appear in the due assignments box, where teachers are setting students nuggets or work to be completed with a due date that would sit down on the right-hand side here. So do look out for any assignment set. And another nice thing to look out on your homepage is for streaks, which is a very light touch of gamification. If I can briefly touch on that, we as a company have focused a lot more on intrinsic motivations for learning, because intrinsic motivations for learning help produce more sustainable lifelong learners who actually understand how they can progress and learn through their own mechanisms. Extrinsic motivations are often found in gamification tools. If your children play Fortnite, the idea of opening a chest or getting badges and rewards, those are extrinsic motivations. Those types of motivations are often unsustainable because eventually children work out what they're receiving and they become to expect that, and so they don't get the dopamine release that they normally would. So actually a lot of our platform is focused on intrinsic, which is a more sustainable version of motivation. But we do have a streak system where children will receive a streak based on logging into Sentry and completing a nugget. One nugget per day will eventually get them a streak to 5, and that will give them a badge. So it's looking at very positive areas and consistent learning behaviors on Sentry. And that's just quite a nice element for students to pick up over time. Penultimate thing is the student courses page. And my courses page is overloaded with different courses across Key Stage 2. Your children will just see the year group specific courses that they have assigned. This is quite a nice page to come if you want to encourage children to independently learn something that's not necessarily being recommended in the pathway. So if, for example, you have a child who loves space and everything to do with space, you might want to go into the science course, and hopefully I've found a course that has something to do with space. Maybe that's actually in the Year 5 primary course. But you can go in here and you can search for anything to do with space, so the moon, the solar system, and you can go and access that independently. So it's a great place to encourage sort of curiosity and finding those materials themselves. The final page is the student dashboard, and that's the bottom page here, which looks a little bit like a car speedometer. So students could go onto this page and it will give students a summary of everything that they've done on their Sentry account. So if they were Sentry users last year, they'll be able to filter by years and see what they did in academic year starting 2020. If they're new users, then they'll just have this year. But it allows you to see how many nuggets you've completed in a week. If you know, a nice competition might be saying, you know, I'd like you to complete 5 nuggets each week. That's your sort of independent learning task. And we're going to review it on a Thursday or a Sunday each week. It will give them more information about how their brain works, and it will show them their recently completed nuggets. So if you're sitting down with your child and you'd like to have a look at their recently completed nuggets, this is a fantastic page to see that summary. And it's really interesting here because you have some quite low average scores, but you also have some quite, well, certainly the top, a low study time. So one thing you might want to do is actually have a look at that. We have a lot of attempts here, and see how students have performed on that area over time. So these are sort of areas where you can go into and just have that conversational discussion with your child, maybe go back and watch the video with them if it's something that they need a bit of support with. And then finally, over here on the courses page, if you want to see a summary of everything that children have done on specific courses, so let's say primary mathematics year 3, you can click on that course and it will show you everything that Sinatra has done, her strengths, her areas for improvement, areas to stretch with, and areas to focus on. For me, these are the most important pages for a guardian, a teacher, and indeed a student on Sentry, because this is showing each and every child's relative and most recent strengths, relative and most recent areas for improvement. But then instead of saying, well, that's it, it's giving them the next steps. So based on your strengths, what can you do to stretch and challenge yourself? And based on your areas for improvement, what can you practice first that will help you with these areas? Now, all of this is naturally being put into the pathway, but this gives you an insight into what they need to study and why. If you're trying to encourage your children to be more independent with their learning, I'd suggest directing them towards this page on a weekly or monthly basis, finding a few areas that they need to practice, and then going away and practicing that, because that will help them accelerate in their learning and close some of those gaps. And also give teachers an oversight into what children are doing outside of the classroom. So that's everything from me. Hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into the product we've built. We're super excited to be working with you again this year, and I can't wait to see over 1 million questions answered on Sentry at GEMS Wellington Kyle. Thank you very much, and I'll stay around for questions.
Thank you very much, Charles. That's really, really helpful. Yeah, please put your questions in the Q&A. And just before, while people are popping those questions in, Charles, if I was to ask you, so as a parent, just as you kind of touched upon, if it's Saturday evening and I want my child to do a bit of practice, but I don't know what they need to work upon, so I'm looking at that dashboard, how would I then support my child in navigating Sentry, of saying, right, where do I find something that they need to work upon, and how do I then get them to access that nugget? Could you just quickly show us that kind of cycle? Because a lot of our parents do ask, the Sentry provides everything automated, but say I've been told by the teacher that they really need to practice a certain skill. How would I use this dashboard to then navigate to actually find and access that nugget for the child?
Yeah, great question. the one thing to caveat is my account, unfortunately, is a demo account. So there's lots of courses assigned, which makes it a little harder than what it should be for you. But let's say you're on your child's dashboard here, and you can see down here the areas that they need to do to stretch themselves and the areas that they need to do to focus on those improvement areas. So my first port of call for encouraging students to find these is always the pathway, because that will give you recommendations. Now, if I go into my pathway, the top tab, you'll see that I've got a range of subjects, but I know that I just want mathematics. So in this instance, I'm going to remove all of the subjects apart from mathematics, and I'm going to press apply on this pathway. That pathway will then readjust and just bring me the mathematics nuggets that I need. Now you can see at the start of my pathway, I've got my diagnostics and I've got a nugget that's been set by my teacher. But down here, I've got all the recommendations for focus for improvement or to stretch and challenge myself. So these nuggets with the arrows are areas that are being recommended and will be in my dashboard as areas I need to practice. That's being recommended by the machine, and that is the quickest way to go and find the things that are needed. The second way, if you want to be more specific about a topic that you want your child to study based on what you've seen in the dashboard. So back to this year 3 mathematics example, if I see here that I need to practice primes in order to challenge myself a bit, all I have to do is then go to my courses page, which is the second tab. And I have to remember that we're talking about the mathematics year 3 course, which if you're only in one year group, you should only see one course. Click on that course there. And in the search box, I'm just going to put the word primes, hopefully when my screen sharing loads. Let me just refresh that. So primary maths year 3 course is loaded. I'm going to type in primes here because I remembered the nugget name, and it's not there because it's the wrong course. But you get the concept. You go in here, you find and search for the nugget. There we go. And it should be there, and you can go and practice that in your own time. You just click on it. So hopefully that's 2 ways. One, very specific, if you're looking and you know the name of the nugget, and the other way of filtering your pathway, so it's just showing a specific topic or a specific subject that you want to study. After you finish studying maths, I always recommend filtering on the subjects again, just because you then get the interleaved effect of moving between different subjects, which increases engagement and helps students regulate the amount of information they're taking on board or have the ability to take on board. So it's always good to put that back on after you finish practicing the topic you've identified.
Yeah. So I've just got, there's one question, it's another question and more some advice really from a parent in year 6. It just refers to the idea of being able to actually see the questions that your child has got wrong. So if you want to spend some time looking, you can actually go deep and delve into, in mathematics particularly, exactly the question that your child's got wrong. So if you want to leave them to do it independently, then look at what they got right and wrong, you can actually use the dashboard to do that, can't you? So from a student's perspective, or from a parent's perspective, if I go into a mathematics course, sorry, I'm sticking with the same subject, but if I go into, for example, counting in multiples of 4, and now bear in mind, again, this is a demonstration account, so there's been lots of false usage on this account. I can see all of the attempts that my student has. Unfortunately, on the student and the parent side, you can only see this level of data. So from a teacher's perspective, they can delve into the types of questions that children have got wrong, and then they can focus teaching or interventions on those particular areas. And that's hugely powerful from a classroom perspective, because if a teacher notices that 90% of a year group is getting a type of question wrong, they can then focus their teaching on that type of question. Classic examples in maths, you often see children getting problem-solving questions wrong, and so teachers have the ability to focus their teaching on that area. Unfortunately, that's not available on the student side or the parent side at the moment, but it's certainly a bit of feedback we'd be happy to take on board.
Yeah, that would definitely be something we'd take on board. The thinking behind students not being able to see the exact after the fact, being able to see the exact questions they got right and wrong, is that they could then reattempt the nugget and simply have that open and try to, on questions sort of level, replicate what they got before. There's a couple of things stopping them from doing that. One is that if they do reattempt a nugget, they'll be faced with a different set of questions. So alternate questions, so testing the same knowledge at the same level, but perhaps with different numbers, for example. So that gives the nuggets a bit of repeatability. And it also enforces the fact that in any learning nuggets, all the answers to all the questions are in the learning material, and the student can return to the learning material at any point while they're completing the nugget. So if they're not sure how to answer a question, then they can return to either the video or the slideshow, and they can figure out the answer from there.
Perfect, thank you. And then just building up on that, now if you want your in the nuggets, if you click on English, if you're adding answers in, it will still provide you with live feedback, won't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I'm answering this question in English on Word classes and I submit this, it'll give me feedback about why. So you just have to look at the bottom and the feedback will appear. There are some very rare instances where feedback is hard to give. So in science, for example, exact answer spellings, obviously there are innumerable possibilities for what children can input in an exact answer box. And so often there is not the ability for us to give feedback on those types of spellings. Yeah, we've tried to bake in feedback for all misconceptions, pitfalls that students fall into, and of course for multiple choice questions where we can bake in feedback quite easily.
Perfect, thank you very much. There's not too many more questions coming through that were kind of Century specific. So just to clarify for Key Stage 2, so today you will have now received a home learning introduction email that introduces everything that we offer for home learning. Century in Key Stage 2 is one of the key aspects in terms of maths, English and science practice. We also use what we refer to as Padlet. So in that home learning menu, there's a link to Century for practice, but there's also a link to Padlet. That's where you'll find like the spellings list for each week and links to kind of things like French homework and Arabic activities that have been set. Century is really the kind of key focus for home learning Key Stage 2, where teachers will set on Tuesday nuggets specifically linked to what the children have been learning about, the children practice, and then from there they will complete the Century nuggets with the idea that's being submitted on the Sunday, and that will appear on the Century screen in that assigned activities at the bottom left of Century. For other activities, so for example, our spelling tests and things which you'll need to practice at home, reading, that is still accessible through the Padlet. So spellings will be set each week, and then obviously home reading books will be sent home for children to practice their reading, because as much as Century is exceptionally important, will drive a lot of that blended learning that will happen. Reading a book, practicing spellings, all those core skills are still exceptionally important. But please refer to the introduction of the home learning email that we will have received today. That will provide you the details. Everything is all on one page on what we refer to as our home learning menu, and that will have all the links to everything that you need to access in order to access all the home learning, including Century and the Padlets, etc. And it will be explained. So thank you very much. If you haven't received that email, and then please reach out to your teacher, and I'm sure they can forward it on to you to make sure they've got all your email addresses, but those will have been sent out today. If we haven't got any more questions, I think that's everything. I'd just like to take, go on,
sure thing.
sorry.
Super quick before the end, in case any questions do pop up after we've ended the call. I just wanted to quickly demonstrate where you could go for answers as well. So I've just posted in the chat. If you go to century.tech/customer-hub, we'll take you to our customer hub. A couple of places to look out for here. There's a parent guide you can download in the launch pack, but I'd also recommend you check out our student resources. So here, as well as a video you can watch, you can also download some student user guides too. And there's also a link to our help page. On our help page, there's frequently asked questions and guidance pages. So you'd perhaps go on this one if you're a student, parent, or guardian, and you'll find answers to many of your questions and extra guides here too. So yeah, just to, of course, as well, you can always get in contact with your teacher. Your teacher will hopefully be able to answer your questions, or if not, it may filter its way up to me and I'll be the one to answer to. So please don't, if you're any questions at all on the platform, don't hesitate to either go down these avenues or get in touch, and yeah, we'll be more than happy to help.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say thank you, Charles, and thank you, Ian, for your help today. I hope it's been very useful for parents. I know last year's session, parents found it exceptionally useful, and I know there were many parents here today. I think we had 150 at one point. I think that's a record. So hopefully lots of people have found this really useful. It will take a bit of time to get children into routines, particularly our year threes who are young and just starting to delve into kind of developing their independence more, particularly with home learning. So be patient. Work with your teacher, work with your student, and I look forward to another kind of successful year using Sentry and making the most of it with our students. So thank you very much, Charles and Ewan.
Thank you all, and thanks for joining.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.